Hi, welcome to God Stories today. My name's Chris Thompson. You guys coming? Hello and welcome to God Stories today. In the studio today I've got a buddy of mine called Chris Lane, and I'm really thrilled he's here because he's got quite a story and he's written a book about it called Ordinary Miracles. So I won't say any more about that because obviously I want him to let you guys know all of the details, but it's quite a book and it's been very successful and I do recommend it to you. Before we start, can I encourage you to subscribe? The more subscribers we have, the more things we can do. This is all about evangelism, telling the good news to people beyond the walls of the church and showing what God can do in the lives of ordinary people when they say yes to him. And the more subscribers we get, the more things we can do because it gives the channel more gravitas, as it were. Please also check us out on social media, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and do tell people about it. And you, if you'd like to be interviewed yourself, please do contact me on godstoriestoday@gmail.com. Chris, how you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. Good to be here.
Thanks for being here. We've been talking about this sort of interview for a long time now, and he's down actually in the southwest, which is where we're filming, and doing some teaching for St Mellitus College in the southwest. So we kind of made use of that time. We normally start off, Chris, with a snapshot of where the person is right now. So if you just like give a summary of that, that'd be great.
Yeah, like you say, I work with St Mellitus College in Liverpool most of the time. So I work 3 days a week for the college. I spend a lot of my time working with a group of ordinands, formation group that I've been with for nearly 3 years now. So they'll all be getting ordained this summer.
Woohoo!
Yeah, they're brilliant. And then I've got the rest of my time I spend in Langworthy in Salford, basically working with the church that I helped to plant 15, 16 years ago now. So just helping to lead the church, being a part of the community. And I'm also spending a bit of time just starting to write a new book as well.
Are you?
Yes.
Scoop! I didn't know that. That's brilliant. Are we allowed to know the title, or is it not formulated
There
yet?
isn't a title yet. It's very much in the kind of research phase at the moment.
Are we allowed to know what it's about?
Well, since I wrote the first book a couple of years ago, a lot of people have got in touch with me saying they're doing similar things to us, but maybe in Glasgow or Oxford or some different parts of the country. And it feels like there's a little bit of a move of God of doing, especially doing stuff around hospitality and emphasis on transformation, particularly in inner city areas. So I want to tell some of those stories, and I want so not just our story, but a lot of different stories, and also to look at the way people use the scriptures as well in those contexts.
Mate, when it comes out, let us know. We'll put it on all the social media and we'll tell everyone about it.
Thanks.
So let's start at the beginning. Where were you born, mate?
I was born in Hope Hospital in Salford.
Wow, that really is specific. That really is.
Thank you. I don't know which ward.
And were you a Christian all your life?
Yeah, I think my mum and dad brought me up as a Christian, so I've always felt like I knew God and God was part of my life and stuff, so I've never really gone through like a rebellious phase where I've not believed in God anymore or whatever. I guess I've always felt like the presence of God with me.
So were your parents Christian then, and they brought you up in that sort of environment?
Yeah, that's right. So my mum and dad, my dad was one of the leaders of the church that I grew up in, and so that, I don't know, I guess I just went along and thought I'd never had reason to not experience God and know him in the Bible and stuff like that. So it was certainly something I was aware of since as far as I can remember.
I was going to say, one of the things I'm fascinated about, and we will get to the more specific things that you mentioned in the notes you very kindly sent through to me, and particularly your encounter with God at Spring Harvest and so forth. But One of the things that I'm really fascinated in is the first awareness of the concept even of God. I remember when I was in primary school, as we call it in England, I must have been about 5, something like that. And I remember reading a book, and it must have been some sort of like Bible story book, those highly illustrated things. And I remember that was the first time I had come across the notion of God, as it were. And it really, really struck me. Can you remember such a time?
I can think back to when I was about 6 and I was sat in my mum's and dad's bed and I was chatting to my mum about heaven and like what happens when you die and how do you know that you're going to be with Jesus in heaven. She was telling me she was, and she was going to be when she died and stuff. And so I guess I remember that conversation. And obviously I was concerned about that at the time, like how do I know I can be with Jesus forever and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think I've always had that kind of awareness of God with me.
Brilliant. So you state, as I said, very kindly sent me through some bits and bobs. When I was about 10, the church started, that you're attending, to very slowly experience a charismatic renewal. This is when I first committed myself to Jesus at Spring Harvest. Tell us about that.
From a young age, my mum and dad started taking us to this conference, Spring Harvest, in the Easter time it was. And I think it was the first time we'd seen, because our church, the Brethren Church, which didn't particularly believe in the gifts of the Spirit, were for today, so we would not have any kind of hand raising in worship, which is what we first saw at Spring Harvest. And I remember being in, so the Spring Harvest would do different venues for different age groups. So I remember being 10 with a guy called Ishmael, who was like a kids worker, and he used to write loads of songs based on Bible verses for kids. And he was the kind of guy, like on the first night, anyone who wasn't a Christian would become a Christian. The second night, he'd encourage everyone to start speaking in tongues, and then we'd all be getting filled with the Spirit. And so that was the kind of environment that I was suddenly plunged into with him. And I was like, what the heck is this? Why are all these kids like this when it looks weird to me and I'm not used to this? But then just this sense of thinking, they've got something that I don't have. And I'd quite like it, but I don't want to become weird like some of them look. I don't want to be out of control, so I think that was when I first came to that bit of a realisation that this is not just something that I just do, that my mum and dad do, and it's just, but actually it's, for me personally, I need to make some decisions, and I need to think, do I want this for myself, and do I want to follow Jesus for myself? And I think that was the first time I really remember that proper journey beginning for me, that wasn't just reliant on my parents, but in this room of 300 kids all worshipping Jesus, and I'm stood there not joining in particularly with what they were doing, thinking I want that, and I'm going to have to make a decision for myself rather than just my parents doing that.
It's interesting you mentioned the notion of making a decision. That really struck me when you said that. And perhaps you might, if you're willing, just talk about the notion of making a decision for Christ. You had obviously this incredible scene before you, lots of things happening in the Holy Spirit, as it were, which if you've ever been to a Christian festival, be it in this country or another one, there can be some things which you haven't seen before, can make you feel, whoa, what is that? Yeah. But nonetheless, there was this sense in you that you had to make a choice. And I think, I don't know, when you said that, I kind of thought about you guys, the viewers, with reference to making a choice. And there might be some people out there who are in that sort of time where they're thinking of, do I, don't I? What would you say to them?
It's an invitation, that's what it is. So it wasn't, at first I was intimidated by the enthusiasm that I didn't see as much in my church at home, and the size of it. But then as I just stood there and thought, I was like, Jesus is inviting me to something more than I know now. And do I want this or not? Do I want to encounter God? And my decisions, therefore, from this point, I guess you're 10 and you're starting to think, I can make some of my own decisions. Yeah. And so that's part of it, isn't it, as well, that one of those decisions is, do I want to follow in this faith that my parents have mapped out for me and taught me about, and the church has equipped me to know the Bible and stuff like that. Do I want that in my own life? And that's the decision I wanted to make at that time. That I do want to go deeper into this friendship with Jesus, really.
I love the way you say it, friendship with Jesus. That's so important. And then you say, at the age of 13, I experienced the Holy Spirit for the first time in a profound way, again, at Spring Harvest. Yeah. Big up Spring Harvest! What happened?
I think doing that regular kind of getting away and being with a load of people my own age, that really kept my faith alive as a kid. Not that the leaders of our young kids work at church weren't really good. They were fantastic, but there's just a few of us, and it was all the ones I knew already. And so when you see, I'm actually part of something here, that there's hundreds and even thousands of people who know Jesus, it makes you go, wow, this is something. This is something that God's doing. And I think I remember going back to the caravan that we were staying in after one of the nights, and that people were getting prayed.
You had a caravan, that's posh.
Well, yeah. People were getting prayed for to be filled with the Spirit, and I was holding back with that a little bit and thinking that looks a bit weird. And then I remember coming back and sitting in the caravan in my room, being scared, like genuinely scared, and thinking, if I say yes to God and His Holy Spirit, will I lose control of myself? Will I, you see people experience God in physical ways, sometimes falling on the floor, shaking, crying. Will I just lose control of everything? And so there was a choice with me at the age of 13 was, what do I want more? Do I want to keep control of myself, or do I want to go after God? And so that became more important to me. The hunger for God became important to me than my own, my own image, my own reputation, my own self-control. And in reality, God wants us to have self-control. And some of the fear was about, could I really trust God? Oh. And so then I make the decision to trust Him. And then you have that experience. And I remember the next night just kind of giving in to God in that way. And I was so full of joy that I remember just running around the site, just running and jumping and running a couple of times with a couple of my mates who were the same. And it was an amazing experience. And and in that moment I was like, I know that I'll never go back on this. I don't want to ever. It's like taste and see that God. Once you've tasted that, nothing is ever as good. Nothing ever compares with it. And so through my teenage years, I never had a rebellious phase. Like I often said to my mum, next year I'm going to start my rebellious phase. I'm going to go out getting drunk and doing all this stuff. But actually, I never got around to it in the end.
It's still time, mate. It's still time. We'll do it together.
Midlife crisis.
So listen, I just want to dig into that a little bit more, if I may, right? Because you said that at the age of 13, you saw this example, this scene before you of people being prayed for. But then you mentioned it was the next night that you had this experience of being filled with joy.
Yeah.
So just talk us up to that moment of being filled with joy. Was it again in the evening? Was there some sort of like prayer thing that you'd gone to before? How did it come on?
It was that, I guess there was the evening meeting, and there's this kind of invitation again, people are worshipping. And so for the first time I'm sat with all my teenage mates, and I'm like, do you know what? I'm more bothered about loving Jesus right at this moment than I am about what they think. And so I'm going to kind of put my hands in the air to worship Jesus. And it's not like a magic thing that you do, but it's just a little physical thing that goes, this Jesus is more important to me than anything else. And I'm not bothered if they go, oh, look at Chris doing that. And suddenly it was like the physical act is like an act of surrender, and you're just saying, yeah, I'm all in with you. I'm all in with Jesus, and it doesn't matter what others think of me.
And was it at that moment then that you were just filled with this joy?
Yeah, definitely. And throughout that evening, really, and I'm not sure if we even went up and got some prayer from people. That was just what God did in me in that moment.
Was the joy a joy that you had a type of joy that you'd experienced before, or did it feel supernatural? Did it feel different to any joy you'd felt before?
It was a kind of buzz, but also it was a lot deeper than that. You know, and it led to that kind of feeling of like, how can I express this physically?
Right.
So that led to me just legging it. I didn't know what else to do with it. Like, I don't dance. Maybe jump up and down occasionally, but and that was the way it expressed itself.
And it lasted for like hours by the sounds of it.
Yeah. And I think I took it with me as I went home and stuff. And you know, and obviously as the months go by, things change and your feelings go up and down. You're a teenager, aren't you? But I think that was one of those moments as a teenager. You have almost different conversion moments. Yeah. There was when I was 10, there was then when I was 13. There was another moment when I was 16 when I was in a relationship with a girl that just wasn't, I knew that God didn't want me to be in it and it wasn't good for me. And when I said, and I apologised to her and said, look, I don't think this is right. That was another moment at 16 where I walked away from that conversation and there was like this peace within me that literally has never gone since I was 16. Like there was something that happened in that moment. So that was a kind of third moment really in those years where it was like me going, I'm even willing to give this up, this thing that gives me self-esteem and this thing that helps me feel good about myself and makes me feel loved. I'm even willing to give this to you, and I'm gonna promise that from now on I will do only what you want me to do. And that was another kind of a third moment really.
Oh, my word. That's a conversation, I think, in and of itself that we could have for almost half an hour, 40 minutes. That moment when you said, you know what, complete surrender to you, Jesus, and it's hard. I mean, it's one of the hardest things to give up a relationship. Yeah. You know, especially when you're 16. You know, it's just like, okay, I want a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something like that.
Exactly.
You know, and there you are. You know, prepared to do that. I mean, not many people. I think I'd find that hard to do, definitely. Yeah. But God rewarded you with a sense of peace that literally has never left you. That's astonishing. Yeah. Truly astonishing.
Yeah, God's very kind, isn't he, like that?
Oh, bless you. Now it says here though, zoom on a few years, that when you were 18. Your 21-year-old cousin, who you were very close to, like a friend, he died unexpectedly. He or she, sorry?
He, Anthony was called.
Bless. The way God helped you through that time has shaped your life since. Would you be willing to talk about that?
Yeah. I think from when I was about 15, I had this real heart to like reach my mates for Jesus. And so me and my two cousins, Jenny and Anthony, who were brother and sister, we kind of chatted about it and we thought, why don't we form a band that we can do like gigs, but also like an evangelistic thing. So I learned to play the drums.
Do you know to play drums? That's so cool.
For that reason, basically. So we formed a band with another mate and started doing these kind of concerts. We only knew 4 songs. Or 3, in fact. 3 songs. So basically it was a completely deceptive thing. We would invite our mates to a gig, we'd play 3 songs, then we'd have a preacher for about 40 minutes. It was completely wrong, and so I repent of it now. But
you don't really.
And then the last song would be one of the other 3 songs from the start, because they're the only ones we knew. And we started seeing people become Christians through it, come to faith through those things. That was really cool, and so we just did everything together, played football together, music, and our Anthony went to uni when he was 18. We still did stuff with the band, and then he was kind of the week of his 21st birthday. It's almost exactly around now when we're doing this interview, and I remember just being at church and someone said, Anthony's gone missing, and we can't find him, he's somewhere at uni, and a day or 2 days later there was a call to say they'd found his body in the sea. And I remember at the time just being like, what, and we don't know what happened, even now we don't know what happened, how it happened. And so I remember getting together with all my mates. Everyone just went to church that night, and they just ended up there. We were all just sat there crying and praying. And I remember there was the funeral, and he'd always lived his life for Jesus. And I remember a few months later, I was in this meeting, like a Christian worship meeting, and there was, I think it was Noel Richards who was leading worship, and he had this backing singer who also played a couple of instruments, like wind instruments, and he said at one point, "Oh, this lady's now going to kind of prophesy to us using a recorder." And my dad was sat next to me, and he hates recorders. So my dad was just like this. I was also like this, but because God started to speak to me straight away. Uh-huh. And I saw this vision in my mind of our Anthony in this field, like running around, having a great time. And I felt like God just gently said to me, "You've been blaming me for this, and you've been saying it's tragic that all of this was taken away from him, and he had his life ahead of him." And I saw this picture of him, and God was like, "I've given him everything. Like he's got everything he's ever wanted right now." And
in heaven.
Yeah. In this moment, and in that moment, it was like God was just healing me from that, and I repented for blaming God for that, and God just kind of broke me down in a really gentle way. And I remember just in that moment kneeling down, crying, and just saying to God, "Our Anthony lived his life for you, and that's what I want to do with every single day. I don't want to miss a day. Mm-hmm. Like he had 21 years. I don't know how long I'm going to have. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to live every single day for Jesus." Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, his life and his death and what God did in me in that moment has encouraged me and kind of spurred me on to take risks for God in my life, and to not live, try not to live just an ordinary, boring life where I'm safe and secure all the time, but actually to take risks for God and to trust him, and so it's kind of his example has helped to shape what I do now with my life.
That's amazing. So just digging into that a little bit further, if I may. If it's too sensitive, we won't. We'll move on. But there's a lot that you've said there, and there's a lot that's kind of also been inferred, and I'd quite like to dig into the inferred stuff. So what a generous act of God to actually sort of almost give you a picture of what Anthony was doing in heaven and what it was like for him in there. So in that, I'd like to ask something, I think it's something along the lines of, how do you feel about death now? And how do you feel about life now? And we've got an indication, because it feels like you've got an awareness of just how short life can be, and therefore don't waste any time. That's kind of what you've been on about, but maybe if you could dig into that a little bit more. It's very encouraging. But did it do anything about the notion of death, the notion of it being, well, scary, final or not, or a doorway? How would you describe death, that sort of stuff?
I think for a few months, it created a lot of fear in me. So, for example, my mum and dad are late home from somewhere, and my instant thought is, are they dead? That was what happened, So for a few months, I guess before that time when God really met with me, there was fear about everything, like nervousness and what if they're dead, and because we kind of hold death as far away from us as possible in our lives, and then when it breaks through the wall and invades our own family, it's completely different. So it shakes you to the core, and it makes everyone realise, actually, this is going to happen to me one day. So you look it straight in the face, and you think, do I actually believe that there is something beyond this life? And I think the way that God kindly dealt with me in that time has made me as sure as I'm talking to you now, that I'm going to see him again one day. I'm going to see Anthony again one day. Hopefully kick a football around with him, which is what we always used to do. And because there's got to be football in the next life, isn't there? And Man United will always win. But and so
a Millwall fan, anyway.
for me, it's like, I'm sure of it. I'm so convinced of it. As much as you're sitting in front of me now, I believe that beyond this life, that I will spend eternity with Jesus.
You kind of already said what I'm about to ask in some sense then, but just to really embolden that, because what you've just said then is just so amazing. And again, I can imagine someone watching this at 2 a.m. in the morning and they're in a situation where mortality is around them, be it either for themselves or a family member. Maybe it's either just happened or, you know, it's been diagnosed and it's about to happen. And that's a pretty, you know, it doesn't really get much more, well, extreme or should we say natural than that. What would you say to anyone who's in that situation?
I think that God is utterly trustworthy. So sometimes I'll do seminars on like heaven and hell and stuff like that, and people get angry and this and that, and they'll talk to me about, well, what if this happened, and what if this person who's never heard the gospel, and then they go to hell, and there's the anger comes from a lack of trust in God. So can we really trust God? Can we really trust him? A friend of mine who was always on a spiritual search, he was a Buddhist at one point and a Mormon at another point, and into the occult at another, and I was always telling him about Jesus, and eventually he sadly took his own life. And I reflect on his life, and I think it's easier to think about what happens next with our Anthony, because I know he's with Jesus. But with that friend, what I've come to the conclusion is that I can utterly trust God with him. So whatever conclusion I come to about what happens to people who don't know Jesus, who reject Jesus, what I know is that when I see him face to face, whatever was the correct thing, I'll be like, that was right. What you have done, Jesus, what you have decided about my friend is the absolute best thing that could possibly be decided. It's the most merciful and loving and kind and just and holy, all of those things. That's what Jesus is. He's all of those things. And so the biggest thing is you can utterly trust Jesus.
Mate, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I really can't thank you enough, because as I said, I often have this sense that you, bless you, you know, the viewer, may well be watching this in some sort of podcast fashion when it comes out, or in the middle of the night or of an evening on your telly, I don't know, and but nonetheless you're going through stuff, be it good or bad, and this is the ultimate, as it were. So to hear someone like you who's had that sort of experience, and you're still, shall we say, a Christian and a minister all these years later, it's just profound, so thank you so much. Says here, though, that in '95 you went to Toronto Airport Church to check out the Toronto Blessing thing. This is where God spoke first to you about moving to Langworthy. What happened?
Well, I guess, like I said, our church had come from this kind of largely what you call cessationist background, where we weren't into the gifts of the Holy Spirit, you know, prophecy, speaking in tongues, being filled with the Spirit. So this kind of a charismatic awakening where we believed that we could meet with Jesus and be filled again by his Spirit, and encounter him and hear his voice speaking to us. And so we started to do that stuff. And then I guess people started to talk about this thing called the Toronto Blessing. And we went to something at some church in Manchester, and it was completely bonkers. People falling on the floor and shaking and doing all sorts of weird stuff. And so some of the leaders of our church were like, right, we're going to go and see it. So they went to visit and to check it out a bit. And some of them...
That's no small thing. You literally bought plane tickets and flew all the way over to Toronto to check this church out. That's quite something.
Well, a lot of people did. It was quite a cool thing to do in charismatic circles in those days. And so most of the team came back completely impacted by God. And so me and my mate were like, why don't we do it as well? It was about a year after our Anthony died, actually. So we got on a plane in October in '95 and just spent a week there. Went to see the Niagara Falls as well, obviously. That was good. But just went in this massive warehouse building and tried to see what God would do to me.
And what did he do? Did he do anything? Or was it one of those trips where...
Well, whilst the whole of the of the warehouse is like a battlefield. Everyone's on the floor groaning.
We're just standing with a cup of tea.
I'm literally standing here like this.
Any moment now, come on.
7 or 8 nights and mornings. And people were like, oh, you've got the oak of righteousness anointing. Because I was solid and steadfast. But on one of the last 2 nights, I can't remember which, I think my legs got too tired and I just like knelt down on the floor. And I remember just kneeling there and I with my eyes closed, and I started to have this picture in my mind of Langworthy. Now, Langworthy was this part of Salford, about a mile from where I grew up, which I would never ever walk through when I was a teenager. If the Langworthy lads were near our school, we'd go out the back entrance. It was that kind of place. It had completely gone downhill over the few years leading up to the early to mid 90s. A load of people who'd just come out of prison had kind of been all moved into the same few streets, and they terrorised the area. And no one wanted to live there. About a third of the houses were empty, abandoned, boarded up. And it just wasn't the place you would go. A couple of gangs kind of ruled the area. And in my mind, as I was praying, I had my hands like this, I saw this vision of, just like a picture in my head, of the estate of Langworthy covered in darkness. And then these planes started flying over, like in a war, like dropping bombs. And as the bomb came down, it pierced a little hole in the darkness. And I felt like God said to me, that's people moving in to the estate to live there, and you're to be one of them. And I was like, oh no.
Man, come on!
Why me? But we'd started to pray for that area, and that's what happens when you pray for something. God asks you to be part of the answer. And I've still got the sheet of paper at home where I wrote it down, and it's got tears on it. It's like stained. It's kind of stained a bit because I was crying as well. And God was just breaking my heart for this place and the people who lived there. And so that was the thing that he did in me.
So it's 2020, that was 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, 23
25?
years. 25? Oh yeah, 95. Sorry, I looked at a different thing.
So I didn't fall over or shake or jump around or float up in the air. But God did something very profound in me on that day.
We'll get back to that in a minute. But it says here that in 96, you first went to Soul Survivor.
Yeah.
Love Soul Survivor. And all that Soul Survivor still is, and has been. But you say it was like a sense of coming home. And I know, because obviously I know, Chris, that you've had connections with Soul Survivor for a long, long time, and actually been at the core of like the trustees.
I'm one of the trustees, yeah.
Trustees. So you've really been at the core of Soul Survivor for a long, long time. But what was this sense of coming home?
It's hard to explain, isn't it? But I guess all my life as a kid, I'd thought about, when I've been in church meetings and the like, I'd always thought, well, how would I do this? So how would I introduce people to the idea that Jesus loves them and God's interested in your life, and this story, and how you can actually experience the love of God? How would I do that? So I always, even from when I was like 10, I would be thinking about these things while I was in meetings and stuff, which is a bit weird really. But when I came to Soul Survivor, obviously I'd been to the Toronto thing the year before, and I'd been to other charismatic gatherings, some of which terrified me, and I remember my youth leader took me to one, and it was just completely bizarre, and they had this little sheet on each table to try and explain some of the charismatic phenomena. And one of them said, it had a picture of someone like with a speech bubble with all this nonsense, and underneath there was the caption, speaking in tongues. I was like, right, so that might happen. And then there was another one, and it was a picture of someone like praying, and then another stick figure falling over like that. And underneath it said, being slain in the spirit. And I remember looking and thinking, what the heck is that? Am I actually going to die? And so I had some kind of not so positive experiences of the charismatic stuff. And obviously the Toronto stuff was amazing, but also utterly wild. That's how it felt to me at the time. And I went to Soul Survivor, and and they started to worship together, and it was just one song after another of love songs to Jesus, and I was like, wow. And no one's interrupting it and giving prophetic word. It was just, let's just focus on Jesus for like 40 minutes and not keep talking at people, but just like love Jesus together. And then the way that Mike and the team explained about the things of the Spirit, it was incredible. It was just, so they would say, you know, we're going to pray for the Holy Spirit to come and meet with us. And you've got a room of 7,000 young people, or, you know, teenagers. And Mike would just go, and he would say, we're just going to wait. And he would explain everything that was happening. So there was no fear in it at all. And sometimes someone might start to cry, and he would just say, that's all right. Sometimes people cry. Or someone might shout or something or scream, and he would say, actually, that can often be just pain coming out of people when they open themselves up to Jesus. And he was just naming it, and then he would be like, I don't know what that is. And then we'd all laugh. But even though we were laughing, God kept doing stuff. Yeah. It was almost like it didn't depend on us. And so he was able to create this safe space where people could experience the love of Jesus and the power of the Spirit, and listen to him and teach us how to hear from God just in a normal way. It was that whole thing about being natural supernatural. That's what they've lived for 25 and more years. And so suddenly I was like, everything that they did in that first meeting, I thought, that's how I'd do it. That's how I'd want to do it, but way better than I could do it. And I was like, flip, I'm home. This is it. It's fun, it's real, it's community, but it's also Jesus is going to do some fantastic stuff in this moment. So it was that combination of things that I was like, this is who I am as well.
I think I'm just aware, actually, it might be worth us actually doing a little bit of a glossary here, because just as you were talking and I was talking, I was thinking, actually, there could be some people watching this who really don't know what the word charismatic means, haven't come across Soul Survivor before, and other such things. So just very quickly, Soul Survivor, there's obviously the church in Watford, it's run by Mike Pilavachi, and there's annual conferences. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, so I guess there were youth conferences that have been happening for the last 26 years in a big showground, mostly in St Mellitus, and they gather together thousands of young people singing songs to Jesus, having talks, and then one of the big things about Soul Survivor was always praying that God would fill us with his Holy Spirit and meet with us and transform us and heal us, and so that was, that's kind of some of the big themes of those festivals, 5-day festivals,
and they were
every
awesome.
summer.
And the word charismatic?
So I guess that would be a type of a tradition in Christianity that emphasises that God's Holy Spirit gives us gifts to use. So especially there would be an emphasis on the gifts in terms of prophecy and word and knowledge. So like hearing the voice of God, speaking that to other people, speaking in other languages that you don't know that God gives you. And various things around, and that praying for physical healing and emotional healing as well. So that they and kind of worship in the style of singing songs with expectation that God would encounter us as we do that.
That's really great. Thank you. What's really cool though about all this is that I love the way that Mike, because I've been to Soul Survivor and been to Momentum and other such things. What I loved about Mike Pilavachi was exactly what you said, and how he was able to make it a safe place for the Holy Spirit to sort of move and hold people in that. I think that was one of his primary gifts, as well as being a good communicator and a fatherly-like figure, and it was just astonishing. And I love the fact that last year, 2019, you guys as trustees were brave enough to say, actually, I think there's going to be a new move of the Spirit, and Soul Survivor, we need to, I used the word pause on that, so that other shoots, conferences and other such things can come forth. Whilst we're on Soul Survivor and you're a trustee, would you mind just sort of like, just for 2 minutes, just saying if you were part of that very meeting when that decision was made, what happened?
I think it's genuinely a God thing. I think it's something that Mike said a number of times since, that actually God never said, I will build Soul Survivor. He always said, I'll build my church. And Jesus said, and we always said all the way along that Soul Survivor is for a time, and when it's not our time, then we'll be brave enough to stop it. And that was the way that the conversations went. And as we prayed together and sought God together, that was the conclusion that the whole team came to, that was the right decision. And I think that reflects the way that team has always behaved, as in, we will do what we feel God is saying, even when other people might think it's crazy. And that's why I've got so much respect for the guys who run that festival over the years. For me, it was all about, I remember in my front garden, I had this massive tree, and we cut it down 2 years ago because it was getting too near the overhead lines. And in the last 2 years, every other plant in that garden has just gone absolutely massive. And it was interesting, and I was thinking of that with Soul Survivor, that actually we've taken this thing down, but it's in order that God might let other things flourish. And so my excitement about these next few years in terms of youth ministry is that loads of other things emerge, new leaders, new songs are written, new worship leaders, new ways of doing things, and it just creates a bit of extra space so that people can think differently and think, what is the new wave of the Spirit for this time?
Big respect to all that Soul Survivor has and is doing. And I just want to thanks, if I can, on a personal level for it all as well, because it has so touched my life. I remember the very first time I went to Momentum, I had what you might call a very charismatic, to use the term you just very kindly explained, conversion experience at the age of 21. And then I think by the age of 24, 5 or something, that had kind of almost been knocked out of me by some of the places that I was going. And then I went to Momentum, and the space was opened up in a way that you just kindly said Mike Pilavachi did and does. I thought, oh yeah, this is me. Yeah. This is what I'm used to. And it was like, oh, where have I been for the last so many years? So thank you. Moving on. There's so much here, but I want to get to some of these crucial things. So sorry if we jump around a bit, okay. You got married in 96. No, hang on, was it 96? 99? Yeah. Sorry.
Got married. That was not my mistake, that was Chris's mistake.
I'm never going to remember dinner ever, am I? You got married in 99. You've already said the Langworthy thing, and it was a lawless place. It says it 2000 message, 2000 event. What's that?
So there was in the year 2000, Soul Survivor decided to move their festivals from Shepton Mallet for 1 year to the middle of Manchester, and basically do a massive 10-day mission.
Wow!
So they worked with the Message Trust and Oasis as well to just put on this crazy, scary thing where we all met in the mornings at the Manchester Evening News Arena, which is now just the Manchester Arena, worshipped together like we normally would at Soul Survivor. But then in the afternoons we all went to projects across Greater Manchester, doing gardens for people, doing street outreach things, all kinds of different things all across the city, and then came back together in the evenings for these massive kind of evangelistic events, which was amazing.
Yeah,
there was a worship band that I was in, and we'd written this song called Arise, which was for Salford really. We wrote it, we started to sing, we were praying through Isaiah 60 where it says, "Arise, shine, for the glory of the Lord rises upon you." And James, who's the guy who led our worship, started to just sing that again and again as we prayed together. And I said to him, we should write a song around that chorus. And so he did. And at Message 2000 in the arena, we were able to lead like 10,000 people singing that song.
No way! That's so cool!
For Greater Manchester, which was amazing.
In 2002, it says that you were on the verge of burnout, bless you, mate. You went to live in Watford to work for Soul Survivor for 2 years. Amazing, miraculous provision from God. Do you mind talking about that?
So, I think when we first moved into Langworthy in 99, I think we were pretty convinced that revival was going to come in the next 2 weeks. So we basically, I can't speak on behalf of the entire team that moved in, but I was pretty much thinking this is going to be an incredible outpouring of the Spirit. The whole estate's going to be changed within a year, hopefully. And And so we just went flat out, 4 nights of youth work a week.
Wow.
We were expected to, obviously there's church on Sunday, there's a small group to be at, there's an early morning prayer meeting to go to. You're learning to live on your own for the first time. Most of these are late teens who'd moved out of home for the first time. And there wasn't quite, it was the very earliest days of the Eden Initiative, so there wasn't quite the support that there might be now and the wisdom that they have now. It was just like, let's go for this. Don't call in sick, crawl in sick, all that kind of nonsense. And so we did, we kept going and we kept going and going and going. And there was a follow-up to that Message 2000 event the year after. But it was just in our estate. Okay. So there's about 800 people came to do this event with us. And it was amazing. And Mike came along for one day, Mike Pilavacci, and he sat in my front room with a few of us. And he looked around at us all and he went, "You all look terrible." And I was like, "What?" Oh, thanks. But we did, and there was no one to tell us to stop. No one really told us, what the heck are you doing? So it wasn't just that was the Eden part of my life, but also I'd just got married the same year. Wow. So I'm trying to be married. I'm trying to learn how to live in a house without my mum and dad looking after me. I'm trying to be in this band that's travelling around the country leading worship at loads of things. I'm leading the youth work at church, a lot of it. I've got these monthly youth meetings that me and a team are in charge of, and no one's kind of told us that that's a problem. And I guess when you're early 20s, you think you can do anything. And suddenly we realised that actually if we look in on ourselves, I'm really cynical now, at that stage. I'm sceptical about things. I'm just like, I'm hard inside. I've hardened inside and I've lost my first love, and that's where we were at, and I didn't know how to get out of it. Right. I didn't know how to get out of it. I was fed up with most things and most people. And Mike said to us, one thing you could do is spend a year with us and just get yourselves back together. And I was just like, I'd like to, but I can't because God's called me here forever probably. So about 6 months later, we moved to Watford. Because I guess we got before God and went, "Do you want us to do this?" And we felt like we should. We didn't have any money. We didn't even have jobs to go to. So me and Esther and 3 of the other guys who were in the band with us all moved together at the same time. And I remember going to have a look for a house, and we'd left it quite late. It was February 2002, and we'd left it late, and I was looking around this house, and we had to move out of our house by the next week, like a week later.
Wow.
And we had a few kind of like backups, but they weren't ideal. And so I went to Watford on the Monday when we had to move out on the Thursday, and I had 2 houses to look round. The first one, the guy said to me, "Oh, it'll be ready in 2 weeks." I was like, "I can't do that. You need to show me the next one." Look around the next one. Someone had given me the day before £1,500.
Oh wow!
So I had £1,500 in an envelope on me, and so the guy said to me, "This house, you could move in it tomorrow if you want to." It was a nice house as well. How much is it? £750 a month, which is 3 times what I was paying in Salford.
Wow.
But you also have to pay that plus the deposit, which is 1 month's rent, £1,500. So I get this out of my pocket, and I go, "Here's £1,500." The guy looks at me, and in his mind he's like, "Drug dealer."
Yeah, we all think that, man.
Drug dealer. And then and so I've signed something then, and he goes, "Right, I'll do a credit check," blah blah blah. So we get to Watford on the Thursday with all our life's possessions in the van, call the estate agents, and he says to us, "You failed the credit check.
Oh, man.
Like, there's no way you can afford it." I was living by faith at the time, as in trusting God for all my income, and so I had about £400 a month coming in. Esther didn't have a job, so that was what we had coming in, and we were about to move into a £750 a month house, and and he's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I've got this letter from someone saying that they'll support me if I need it. But also, I just looked at him and I was like, you will get your money every single month. And and he looked at me and I'm sure he must have been like, definitely drug dealer, But for some reason he let me sign the stuff. And for the first 5 to 6 months of living in Watford, I didn't have a job for the whole time in terms of paid, but Esther didn't have a job for at least 5 months, I think, 4 or 5 months. And we never went into debt once in the 2 years that we were there.
Wow.
God just provided for us again and again and again, miraculously.
Well, like money would just turn up.
Yeah, just random stuff through the post, checks, blah blah blah, little bits of work that paid me money,
right.
just different things like that. But mostly just people writing me a letter and saying, God told me to send you this, and it would come in the post and stuff, and it was incredible, and it was just the confirmation that I needed, because some of the time I was thinking, I'm like on a 2-year sabbatical here. I was getting to do all the cool stuff at Soul Survivor, like preaching and leading youth work and different things like that, but without loads of responsibility. And I thought, I'm living the dream here, but the confirmation was that God kept providing for us. And so we spent 2 years there, and after the first year, it became clear that God was wanting us to return to plant a church.
So, would you believe it? We're running out of time.
Right.
So I know it's a crucial point in your life, as it were, because obviously it's been, well, the backbone of so many things. But if you could just give us the summary of what that church is like now, and also I think the notion of it being built on hospitality and around tables and that kind of stuff would be great, and then lead us up to the time when you actually got the job at St Mellitus as well.
So we started in 2004, Easter Sunday, and we just wanted to do it around food because we wanted to say everyone's welcome.
My kind of church.
Jesus welcomes you all. So for literally 15, nearly 16 years, every Sunday we meet at 12:30. And we eat a meal together, and that's the first thing that everyone does when they come to hang out with us on a Sunday. And it's always been chaotic from the very start, when there was someone there who was drunk on the first Sunday and started heckling me, but in a nice way.
Sorry I did that.
Well, you've come to Jesus now, so and a little toddler who's about 2 who ran around the room shouting the F word. And I remember at the end of it thinking, drunkenness, swearing, food, surely it's going to improve. Pretty much the same now. Except I'm doing the swearing. And I guess we've just tried to be a welcome to everyone and anyone, and say, especially those of you that don't know Jesus, he invites you to come and be a part of something, and he invites you to come and receive healing, and he's good, and he's wonderful, and so we've done that, and we've got a little community centre called the Life Centre that we run that does all sorts of different projects, especially loads of stuff around food still, a breakfast group for kids that are really struggling in our area, that we do lots of stuff around holiday hunger during all the school holidays, providing really good quality meals for kids who are on free school meals in our estate. Loads of other stuff around youth work, kids stuff, legal advice, counselling, and just trying to work with our community to provide what's needed, really.
Amazing. And I've heard so many amazing things about the church, and I love the fact that you're very honest about your journey as a minister as well, because it's not been easy. There's been ups and downs and so forth, and I know God has called you into quite a role now to support other ministers who are in a similar sort of place, as it were, and experiencing something of the same type. But you got the job in St Mellitus. I'm sorry to sort of push towards that, but it's
cool.
Obviously a really big part of your life. So if you can answer that, and then I want to ask you a theological question that I ask every interviewee.
So with Mellitus, I guess in Langley I'd worked for years using some of my giftings, like I'm good at making people feel welcome and being themselves and stuff like that. But I love thinking about stuff as well, and I love teaching. My parents are both teachers, and so I've got that thing that I love teaching. And I thought I'd love to work for a theological thing one day. And I saw a job with Mellitus a few years ago, but before I'd done my MA, and so I didn't get an interview. But the principal of the the centre director at the time, Jill Duff, she asked me to come in just to have a chat, and she got me doing a couple of sessions with him occasionally on church planting and stuff. And then she invited me 3 years later they had a job coming up, and I saw it on the website, and I thought, that looks cool, but I've not got a PhD, and I've got no chance. So then she called me and said, "Oh, would you apply?" And I was like, "Well, I don't want to waste your time because I've not got a PhD, and I'm not, if I'm not even Anglican."
Shock! Horror! I can't believe I'm not interviewing an Anglican.
You can edit that out later. And she was like, "Oh no, you'll get an interview." So I thought, "Oh, it's worth going to have a chat with him." And then when I went, there was only about 2 interviewees anyway, and I thought, "Flip, I've got a chance here." And then I ended up getting the job, and I've loved it. It's been...
Oh, mate, you're a great teacher. You're a great addition to St Mellitus, you really are. And now you've got the national sort of brief for Pioneer Ministry, yeah?
Yeah, so I guess just trying to look out for how do we look after and equip our pioneer ministers really well, and just the whole college, how do we raise that awareness around the importance of pioneering, and I guess helping that wherever you go into, you've got a good, you think favourably about the church needs to be a pioneering church and support our pioneers.
So the right man for the job. So the right man for the job.
I've just loved every bit of it, to be honest, last 2.5 years.
And it shows.
Yeah.
Because you're just brilliant at what you do. Theological question before we get on to my quickfire round of questions called Spotlight, okay? I ask this of every interviewee. Imagine you're in the garden that Jesus and Mary are in on the very first Easter day. You actually are a gardener. Jesus was mistaken for being a gardener, but you actually are a gardener. You're just raking away. It's the Midlands. It's the Middle East. There's a joke there, but it's the Middle East. You're raking away. You're doing your thing, and in the corner of your eye, you see this exchange between this guy and this woman, and it's obviously that discussion that Jesus is having with Mary, saying, "Don't touch me. I haven't risen to my Father yet, but go and tell my disciples." Blah blah blah. What happened to humanity on that first Easter day?
I think that the thing about the resurrection is it's almost like a new breed of human being has been unleashed upon the earth. So when Jesus, if you go back into where Jesus and Lazarus, where Lazarus dies, and then Martha comes to Jesus and she goes, "If you'd been here earlier, you could have healed Lazarus." And Jesus says, "Your brother will rise again." And she says, "I know he'll rise again on the resurrection on the last day." So she's talking about this glorious day that's to come. And Jesus stands in front of her friend, who he stays at her house when he goes to Jerusalem, and he goes, "I am the resurrection and the life." And now he's proved it. And so the resurrected body of Jesus is the prototype. It's kind of like this is the sign of the new creation. So in the same way that that's happened to his body, will also to your and my bodies eventually, and to the whole of this creation. God isn't going to get rid of the old creation and just make something new, but like he took the broken, beaten body of Jesus, dead body of Jesus, and made it new, rather than just chucking it away and starting again. He's not going to chuck away the creation and start again, but renew it. And that's the hope, isn't it? That's the glorious hope. That's why we follow Jesus in this thing of, "Behold, I make all things new." That's our job, isn't it? It's part of our job to follow Jesus in doing that, and to seek God in all of those places as Jesus makes everything new.
Mate, that was astonishing. I'm sitting there because I'm an evangelist, really. I think that's the title I'd want to humbly sort of say, in a fumbling sort of, ridiculously bad way that I am. But I'm sort of like super pumped by what you said. And may that be for anyone out there who's like feeling anxious about life, who possibly is suffering from depression, or is just a bit low. Anyone out there who's just sort of wondering what it's all about. That's what it's all about. That's the hope that is indestructible, that we can rest our lives upon, and it's the truth of existence. It really is. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Cool.
Now we come to the hard bit, though. Spotlight! Are you ready? Okay, so it's quick fire, okay? Just a bunch of silly questions, but as I often say, a psychologist would have a field day with this, but equally it's just a bit of fun, okay? Cool. The thing you can't live without. Everyone says their wife or their husband.
What can't I live without? Oh, flip. It's not quick fire anymore, is it? Sorry. I couldn't live without my library of books.
That's a good answer. If you weren't doing the job you do now, what's the job you'd love to do?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a paleontologist, so digging up all dinosaur bones and stuff like that.
That would be so cool. Film star crush?
Nicole Kidman.
Secret pleasure?
Or sometimes when it's dark and late and Esther's not in, I watch Christian TV.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Cool. It's this channel. If you could have a superpower, which one would it be?
To be able to fly.
That's the one I'd like. Favourite cereal?
You know those crispy minis with chocolate chips?
I do.
They're pretty good.
Nice. When were you happiest?
I think thinking back to when I was a first year at uni, that was an incredible year of meeting hundreds of people and eventually meeting Esther. So that was the culmination of that year.
Because you're an extrovert, aren't you? So it's got to be about people.
It's amazing.
Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Milk.
Good man. Ketchup or brown sauce?
Ketchup.
Can you reverse park?
Easy, yeah. Well, I lived in Watford for 2 years. You have to learn.
Favourite virtue?
Virtue, kindness.
Nice. What frightens you?
The thought of Liverpool winning the league this year.
Mate, seriously?
I'm terrified about it.
Okay. I'll pray. You're in heaven for the first time and you meet Jesus for the first time, face to face. What's the first thing that you'd like to ask him?
I quite like to ask him, am I allowed to be a little bit silly? I quite like to ask him, when he walked on water, like, what was it like? Was it squashy? Or like, did he just kind of walk above the surface?
I'd love to know
or
that.
Did he get wet as well?
Yeah.
Or not? So I want to know, I'm really interested to know what that's like.
That's such a
Not
cool
very
answer.
deep or profound though.
No, I really like that. Yeah. You're in heaven for the first time, you meet Jesus for the first time. What's the first thing you'd like him to say to you?
I guess what Jesus has said all my life to me is, keep going, you're doing well, keep going. And maybe just to say, you did well, well done.
Well done. Again, you're in heaven for the first time. You're able to throw a dinner party. There's about 5 guests around the table, including you. It's a round table, very nice. As much food and drink and whatever you like can be served, because that's what heaven's like. People from history, biblical characters or political characters or just major figures, as it were, or not, as it were. Who would you have around the table?
I'd like to meet Luke, the writer of Luke's Gospel, because I love Luke's Gospel. I'd like to chat to Deborah from the Bible as well.
Cool.
Because I think people talk about her quite a lot, and I'd like to know what it was like to lead in the way that she did in that kind of patriarchal society. Who else would I want? I don't know.
No.
I'd like to hang out with my old granddad, who used to make me laugh a lot. That would be good. And our Anthony as well, I guess, because I've not seen him for a while. So that would be good. And maybe some famous United footballer like George Best or something, see what he had to say.
Wow, that would be a dinner party I'd love to go to. Last question. You're in heaven for the first time. Who's the first family member you'd like to meet? Or person?
Well... it'd be good to see, apart from the ones I've just mentioned, it'd be good to see my grandma again. She was only little, 4'9".
Wow.
But she used to give me nice chicken and leek soup. And that's one of and Vimto ice cubes as well. Fantastic. So if we could have, she used to give me dandelion and burdock with Vimto ice cubes in. So I would like to do that with her again.
Oh, we all need a grandma like that, don't we? Mate, you've been superb, as I knew you would be, and as I said, may this interview touch the lives of countless people, not only in its first wave, but as the channel is developed and events around it are planned and executed. So thank you. We have a tradition whereby the interviewee prays us out, but with the viewers in mind. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, God, thank you for what we've discussed today. Thank you for everyone who's going to hear this and listening to it right now. And I just want to pray that you would meet us in the different places that we're at, the fears that we have, the grieving that some of us are going through, And I pray that some of those stories of you at work would give us comfort and peace and hope. So would you use some of those stories to draw us closer to you? In Jesus' name.